Hello, welcome to our presentation on disciplinary accreditation and assessment reporting, how to successfully navigate these cyclical processes and generate results useful for everyone. I'm Ann Baird, one of today's presenters and the architecture librarian at the University of Florida's Architecture and Fine Arts Library, or as we call it, AFA. My colleagues at AFA are the other two presenters, Jacob Malwin, Music and Performing Arts Librarian, and Ann Lindell, Art and Art History Librarian, as well as Director of AFA. Our presentation today began with a survey the three of us sent out to our fellow librarians, administrators, and staff in the 6 UF libraries, inquiring about roles they might have played in the accreditation process. Accreditation is a regular process for institutions of higher education that happens on an institutional level with agencies such as the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commissions on Colleges. Why is accreditation essential in higher education? It does serve a dual purpose. One, to assure quality in educational programs and student success, and to aid the institution or department in a process of continuous improvement. The cycle for accreditation generally follows this pattern in terms of library involvement. During the fall semester is what I usually call the first phase that takes place, and this is when the scheduling and establishment of deadlines for the self-study and subsequent site visit by a visiting team representing the accrediting bodies such as the American Council for Construction Educators, the ACCE, if you're in construction management, or if you're in chemistry, the ACS, the American Chemical Society. The next step in this is the administrators and the faculty and in the department prepare self-study, and the liaison librarian is usually contacted to provide answers to questions about information, resources, and statistics on collections and services. Once the librarians have what they need and know what resources they need to do research on, they review the questions asked and put together a response. Other colleagues in cognate areas are often consulted, and acquisitions and other departments are asked to provide statistics and budget information. This can include information about collections, budget, staffing, how the program faculty interact with librarians, the services provided, and the facilities of the library. During the spring semester, a team of 4 to 6 visiting administrators, scholars, or professionals will visit campus to talk with the administrators, faculty, staff, and students within the department as a follow-up to the self-study document received from the department. During this visit, librarians may be asked to meet with the team or team member, to tour library facilities, to have a conversation about collections, services, and facilities, and respond to any follow-up questions. After the visit, there's a report from the accreditation team, most often with a favorable outcome, but sometimes with suggestions for improvement or enhancements. It is useful to view this visit and the resulting report as the outcome of intensive consulting with peers and professionals in the field. And occasionally there might be a follow-up by the accreditation team. Surveyed our colleagues in the Smathers libraries. Of the approximately 80 librarians in the 6 libraries that make up the UF libraries, we received 45 initial responses, 26 of these from liaison librarians who work directly with the programs. Of these original 45, only 19 had been involved in an accreditation process. These 19 are the ones that we're interested in for this survey. This pie chart shows the breakdown of respondent librarians in their respective libraries. The responses from the Marston Science Library and the Health Science Center Library combined accounted for about 1/2 of the return surveys, the overall return surveys. The librarians in the STEM programs as a unit were the most numerous to respond, but the remaining half represented a broad range of disciplines, represented from art, music, architecture, to anthropology, history, political science, English, to education, journalism, film, and folklore. In the survey, we were curious what were the most frequent requests of the librarians by the departments during the accreditation process. What we discovered was that the most popular, or the largest group, was for information and statistics on collections and its size. Fewer were asked to give statistics on budgets. Only 6 of the respondents met with department faculty and administrators at the very beginning of the process to discuss what was required. 8 met with the on-site team visitors who seemed interested in discussing the library services and collection. So there were some library tours which varied from a complete tour to a simple walkthrough. One library stated that she didn't talk much during this process. A glaring fact learned from this survey is that only 2 of the respondents had received what they felt were any type of training. One by the Senior Associate Dean of a college to introduce the accreditation process to all those participating in it. The other's quote training was less formal. These were answers to questions posted on an engineering librarian listserv. Almost all the librarians who did respond felt that they needed some form of help, whether from staff in acquisitions and services or colleagues. Our survey contained more questions and answers than the few I have discussed. That's another presentation in another paper. I'd like to end my portion of this talk with the last quote listed on this comment slide. These were a few comments that the librarians had posted in their survey. There were more, but these were the ones that were that had the most variety. But the last quote that you can see is, "Training on how to do this properly is greatly needed. I provided what my department requested with the guidance of my colleagues, but I did not feel prepared to complete the task. No official training was available to assist me. Thank you for exploring this topic." That's the end of my presentation on survey results. And now Jacob Maldwin will present next on a case study that he encountered when he first came to AFA Library. After Jacob presents, Ann Lindell will speak last on strategies for finessing the process of accreditation. And I thank you for your time.
Hello, I am Jacob Maldwin, the Music and Performing Arts Librarian at the University of Florida. Today, I will be presenting on a recent accreditation process I went through earlier this year, the Masters of Arts in Ethnomusicology in our School of Music. In February of 2023, I started in my new role as the Music and Performing Arts Librarian at the University of Florida. Before I arrived, the School of Music had been working with the National Association of Schools of Music, NASM, to get accreditation for a new Masters of Arts degree in ethnomusicology. The School of Music already has NASM accreditation for all of their music degrees, ranging from the Bachelors of Arts in Music, Bachelors of Music in Composition, Performance, and Theory, to Master's and Doctoral degrees in Composition, Theory, Performance, Jazz Studies, Education, and the Doctor of Philosophy. Before the School of Music started this accreditation process, the previous Music and Performing Arts librarian had left, leaving our other wonderful library faculty and their colleagues from the School of Music to take care of the situation. As such, one of my first assignments was to help with the accreditation process. Before I arrived, the School of Music had already submitted an initial report. However, NASM had come back with follow-up questions. NASM reported needing more information on library materials to ensure that the library could support the study of ethnomusicology at the master's level. Additionally, they wanted the report to specifically address how the music and performing arts librarian communicated with faculty in ethnomusicology about purchase requests and supporting the ethnomusicology program. In addition to being new at the University of Florida, I had moved position types from a first-year engagement librarian who had nothing to do with accreditation issues to a subject-specific discipline. I decided that the best way to get up to speed on this process was to reach out to other librarians who had recently gone through this accreditation. To do this, I visited NASM's website and looked up their list of accredited institutions. Unfortunately, NASM's website does not have any features to sort institutions by accreditation type, so I first browsed institutions that I thought would have an accreditation in ethnomusicology at the master's level. While I found a few results this way, it was not a very effective search strategy. I then browsed alphabetically by all schools on the NASM's list and clicked on them to find schools that had the Masters of Music and Ethnomusicology accreditation. I was able to find 4 schools who had this, and so I reached out to those 4 librarians. Luckily, all of the librarians that I reached out to responded. While none of them were at their institutions at the time of the initial accreditation, they were more than happy to share their most recently submitted self-reported studies that their institutions had used for their reaccreditation process. These reports were very helpful because they provided models for what a successful accreditation report looked like. In addition to modeling the information provided off of what other schools submitted, I wanted to make sure that I was answering the questions NASM specifically had for us. To show NASM that our library is capable of supporting a master's level program in ethnomusicology, I created a list of databases that we had access to support ethnomusicology. I included the music databases, but I also branched out to include databases that support related disciplines such as anthropology and folklore. I also decided that it might be helpful to put together a list of journals that we had access to support the research needs of ethnomusicologists. I tried searching for a core list of journals curated by a professional organization, such as the Society for Ethnomusicology. However, I could not find one. Instead, I looked for libguides on ethnomusicology, anthropology, and folklore to get ideas for journal titles. I then searched our catalog to see if we had access to these journals and made my own list. Next, I made sure to address the question on what communication between faculty of ethnomusicology and librarian looks like. I addressed how I send out emails each semester to faculty, reminding them of what I can do for them, including library instruction, incorporating information literacy skills into assignments, and fielding the request to purchase items for the library collection. I also mentioned how if faculty members request an item, it does get purchased. I then reached out to our acquisitions team for the next part of the report. I had to gather information on the current size of the music collection, as well as information on our budget. Deciding what statistics to gather was a bit of a challenge. For literature on ethnomusicology, Library of Congress uses the ML 3544 through 3776 class, which covers folk, national, and ethnic music. Looking at scores, the corresponding class is M 1687 through 1853. However, using just these ranges is misleading because related materials will fall in a wide range of classifications in the Library of Congress system. But NASM doesn't specify what ranges they're looking for in the Library of Congress. Because of this, I only reported items that were listed in the M classifications. Acquisitions was able to provide the requested data, and I sent it to the School of Music. Additionally, because the librarians had saved past accreditation reports, as well as reports for new degree programs, lots of boilerplate language was already saved that could be copied and pasted into the document needed by the School of Music for this accreditation report. After sending this report to the School of Music, I didn't hear back from them. I'm hoping that they have all the information they need and that they have received accreditation. However, I do need to reach out to the School of Music to follow up. Now, I will turn the time over to Anne Lindell to talk about best practices and tips and tricks that she has picked up along the way during her experience going through many accreditation processes here at her time at the University of Florida.
Anne Baird gave an overview of the accreditation process, some ways that libraries interface with related activities, and impressions we gathered when we surveyed our University of Florida library colleagues on this topic. Jacob Maldwin then presented a more in-depth case study of a recent accreditation process with our School of Music. To extend that information, I'm going to talk about some strategies and suggestions that we have found contribute to success in partnering with academic programs during the accreditation process, and how you might use these strategies and the information generated for related purposes. To that end, I'm going to talk briefly about the items on this list. Timing and communication, which really comes down to the latter. Tips for preparing the self-study documents. Strategies for stress-free visits with the on-site accreditation team. Suggestions for keeping these documents for easy retrieval for yourself and others. And how to repurpose your work for other assessments. You want as much lead time as possible in order to prepare and deliver quality information for your program's accreditation process. This is where your prior relationship building reaps its rewards. Or alternatively, if you're new to the institution, it's a good way to get to know the program in depth and to get off on the right foot with your new academic colleagues. Keep in mind that you may also need to get information from your internal library colleagues, such as acquisitions, to complete your report, and you want to give them lead time as well. Find out the deadlines and dates and make sure you have up-to-date forms and questions from the accrediting agency. Try to get the report from the previous cycle, either from program faculty or your own files. Compare it to current questions and expectations. In preparing the library portion of the self-study, you will more than likely be asked to provide budget information, collection counts, and other statistics. One of the issues with the standard questions often provided by the accrediting bodies is that some of them are outdated, with perceived quality based on volume count and counts of other media, such as microforms and other legacy technologies that are seldom used in 21st century libraries. Or you are presented with a form to report budget figures that doesn't really conform to the complexity of funding at your institution. Sometimes it is necessary to bend these forms to your will using asterisks, footnotes, and additional explanatory verbiage. On this slide, you can see how I've made extensive use of footnotes to explain our library budget, particularly for electronic resources, since so many of those are interdisciplinary in nature and are financed centrally or through multi-institution consortial purchases. In addition to collection and budget statistics, the questions usually address staffing, facilities, instruction and accessibility, hours, computing, and services such as reference consultation, course reserves, and interlibrary loan. If you have access to the previous accreditation self-study reports, either forwarded from the department or from your own files, you can often just update the numbers and make tweaks to describe facilities, staffing, and services. Always ask to see the current instructions for the self-study from the accrediting body. If this is difficult to obtain from your department, you can usually access it on the accrediting body's website. In collection narratives, it is useful to reference standards and core lists of resources developed by the accrediting body and associated academic societies and professional organizations. This slide references the core list of periodicals developed over the years by the Association of Architecture School Librarians. This organization also sends a representative to some meetings of the National Architecture Accreditation Board in order to serve as a consultant when accreditation standards and surveys are updated. Months after you've completed your portion of the self-study report, the accreditation team site visit will occur. In preparation for this, Communicate with the department or program about the library visit and how much time will be allotted. Will it be with the whole team or just one or two team representatives? As soon as possible, find out the names and institutions of the members of the site visit team and do some research on who they are and where they're from. Check to see if you have their publications in your library, and if not, acquire them if you have time to do so. You can always use one of their titles as a search example if you get the opportunity. They'll probably laugh and see through you, but they'll know that you've done your research. During the visit, you may be asked to give a library tour and/or have a question and answer session with members of the site visit team. I suggest preparing a one-page information sheet with statistical highlights that address resources and services important to the program being accredited. They'll have read the self-study, but this will remind them of the highlights. Make sure to include your contact information for follow-up if needed. Once you've completed the process, be sure to save your documents in an easily accessible location. My colleagues and I are in the process of moving accreditation documents concerning programs served by our branch into a shared Microsoft Teams file. This way, your colleagues can borrow your descriptive verbiage, which can serve as boilerplate language about the campus library system and its general services that can be plugged into most reports with a little updating. In addition to the formal reports, it is useful to save notes on the way you derive certain statistics so you can more accurately make a trackable update for the next cycle. Ditto for informal notes on the process, what colleagues you consulted, etc. Both the shared formal documents and these kind of notes will be invaluable to your successor should you not be the next person to do this for any particular program. As you contribute to your program's accreditation, remember that while there are dates and deadlines, it's not a one-off event. The relationships you foster and the information you gain from the site visitors and the final report from the accreditation body will be useful going forward as you plan new services and collection strategies to serve that program and others. You can sometimes use feedback from the accreditation team report as advocacy for increased budget and resources, and their comments can create awareness of library services to faculty who may have been previously unaware. On this slide, we've included references for a few articles that were useful to us as we prepared this presentation. Thank you for attending our Charleston Conference session. At this point, my colleagues and I will be happy to take any questions you may have.